So, I have been reading some interesting research that shows that sometime after the age of 60, depending on how many hours a week you work, you're actually going to start to get fitter. You're going to get more healthy. You're going to reduce your body mass index. You're going to improve your mental health. You're going to speed up your walking speed. Do you want to know what the secret is?
Yeah, curious actually.
It's the day that you qualify for your seniors card and your gold able card. Apparently, just reducing cost barriers to public transport encourages people to walk more to the bus stop, to get out more, to interact with other people and do all sorts of things that improve our health. And this is just an example of what we're going to talk about today, which is active transport. I'm Nikki Sloan. I'm CEO of Community Industry Group, and I'm coming to you today from the beautiful land of the Dharawal people. Welcome to Community Matters, a podcast that is about our local community in the New South Wales South Coast and some of the great solutions that people are coming up with to make a difference in our community. Today I'm joined by George Takacs. George, would you like to tell everyone about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Yeah, so my name's George Takacs. I work as a volunteer at Healthy Cities Illawarra, coordinating the Illawarra Shoalhaven Active Transport Taskforce. So we're trying to make it so that people have more transport choice in our region, and that region for us is Wollongong, Shell Harbour, Kiama and Shoalhaven council areas.
George, there's currently a great opportunity in the Illawarra Shoalhaven to contribute to a very important strategic plan, the Illawarra Shoalhaven Strategic Regional Integrated Transport Plan. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's currently out for consultation through Transport for New South Wales. George, at Healthy Cities, you have a focus on active transport. Could you explain to us a little about what active transport actually is and why it's such an important issue for our region?
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Well, active transport is simply walking and cycling and maybe using some other forms of mobility like a scooter or so on, but it's something which involves some level of physical activity and is generally used to replace a car trip on a short journey. So, it could be you going to your local cafe, it could be, you walking with your child to school, anything like that, or visiting a friend. Some of those shorter trips that we do and using some physical activity in that trip to realise the health benefits as well as to accomplish the trip. And with that strategic regional integrated transport plan, it's a real mouthful, but it's basically the state government asking, what do we want to see transport look like within this region in the future? And it's a real opportunity for people to think about ways they could get around their community better. And at Healthy Cities, we do have a focus on active transport because it's a really easy way of incorporating physical activity into people's daily lives. Physical activity is so important for maintaining or improving people's health and avoiding a whole lot of different lifestyle-induced diseases. Just by way of example, people who commute to work by active travel means, there's been a lot of research on this, and they actually have about a 30% lower risk of dying during, say, a 5-year time period than people of a similar age who don't use active transport to get to work. So it has amazing health benefits, far better than any drug you could be taking to improve your health.
Wow, that is quite a shocking statistic, particularly for someone who drives about 80 k's to get to work every day. I'd be really interested. You've been so involved in active transport, and I'd be really interested to hear what you would like to see in this new strategic plan.
Yeah, well, I think what I'd like to see, so we can realise some of these health benefits, is a greater focus on active transport amenity. So up to now, and we've been doing this for many decades, our transport planning has all revolved around the car. And it's no wonder that people primarily use a car to get around because we've made that the obvious choice, the easy choice for them to make. But as a result of that, we've got this, this chronic disease burden that's increasing with more and more people getting sick from all these things like heart disease and diabetes and so on, and suffering some quite severe consequences because we've taken physical activity out of their daily lives. We've made it difficult for people to walk and cycle. So, I'd like to see that reversed in this plan, and I know there's a global shift in that direction, and that shift is also reflected in the attitudes of people who are transport planners at local government and state level. So if we could get better facilities for people walking and cycling out of this plan, better access to public transport, so fewer people need to own a car, which also improves transport equity. Lower cost alternatives to cars are things that are really good for people who are in lower socioeconomic groups, because it improves their mobility relative to those people who can afford a car. And so often we disadvantage poorer people in our transport planning because we favour people who've got the financial capacity to buy and maintain a car.
I think you've touched on a really important point there, the inequity of public transport across our region. I think when we think about the Illawarra Shoalhaven, we sometimes focus on the urban areas, but in fact we have a really large regional and rural community. What would you like to see in that strategic plan that really targets people who don't live in the cities? Yeah,
well, we definitely need improved public transport access. There's so many areas, and I know Community Industry Group covers a region right down to the border. I recently had to catch public transport across the border, and it was pretty interesting getting public transport from here down into Victoria, because you can't do it in one day.
Wow.
Right, you need two different bus services. You have to stay overnight. I had to stay overnight in Eden and catch another bus early the next morning to get into Victoria. So that's just one example. Also, if we look at our rail services here, we have rail services within our region that are infrequent. Like if I wanted to catch the train here this morning, there was only a train going every hour that would get me to Oak Flats, which is the nearest station to here. So I ended up having to ride my bike, which is not a great sacrifice because I like riding a bike. But it just meant I didn't have that other option. So we'd like to see people having more transport choice. Right, that is, I suppose, the key thing we want out of this integrated transport strategy, for people to have more choices so they don't always have to choose the car, or if they don't have a car, they're not disadvantaged.
Yeah, fantastic. And Community Industry Group is a lot about voice. How could individuals have a say and have their voice in this strategic regional plan?
Yeah, well, the state government has made it really easy now for people to have their say on a whole variety of matters. So they've got a website, Have Your Say website, and there's a link on that to having your say on this strategic, I'll get the name right, I won't say strategic regional integrated transport strategy. And you can actually just go onto that Have Your Say website, and you can just drop pins on a map in the location where you think there's a problem that you want to see solved. And I've used that before for other things, and I'm going to use it for this now, because riding my bike down here this morning, I encountered several problematic areas up north of Warrawong, between Warrawong and Port Kembla North Station, that really need some simple fixes to make that better for people to use there, because there's places there where it's impossible to go with a mobility scooter now because your footpath ends where you need to cross a lane of traffic and there's no ramp from the footpath down to the road level, so you're just stuck. Simple things like that are just missing, and that Have Your Say website makes it really easy to drop a pin and say, this is the problem here.
And we'll make sure we include that link in the show notes, so anyone can get onto it. But it would seem to me that if it's an issue that you've noticed, it would be an issue that lots of other people had noticed. And so if people go on and see a pin, they could also drop a pin there.
Yep.
And it would seem to me that the more pins there are, the more notice the government's going to take.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing. And even if you do it today, go back a week from now and see what else is up there, because you might want to reinforce what other people have put up there as well in other places.
Yeah, that's a great hint. And of course, both Healthy Cities Illawarra and Community Industry Group are both making submissions to this. So if you've really got a burning point, they could contact either one of us, and we'd be really interested to hear what people have got to say as well.
Yeah. Well, with the Active Transport Taskforce at Healthy Cities Illawarra, we are really keen on having input from community members. That's one of the reasons we set up that task force, so community members could provide input through us in a forum with people from the 4 local councils that we serve, which is Wollongong, Shellharbour, Kiama and Shoalhaven, and also Transport for New South Wales people. It's a great way of getting your voice heard if you get involved in that task force.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. So people can reach out to you at Healthy Cities and join the Active Transport Task Force. You've been doing some really important work for many years now on active transport. Can you tell us what have you learnt through the process?
Well, I have learnt that advocacy works. It pays off. It also works better if you've got allies, other people who are willing to support what you're saying and independently lobby decision makers, whether they be at local government or state government level. And we've had a great example during the course of this year with a massive road building project near the university in Wollongong, a $400 million road project, which was going to make it more difficult for people to get to university on foot or by bicycle, but easier to get there by car, and at the same time make it more difficult for people to get to the TAFE, a couple of high schools, a Montessori school and so on. And there was going to be a bridge to alleviate that problem as part of the project, and it got deleted early this year. And so the community got together, a lot of people, and lobbied hard their politicians at federal and state level, as well as local government. And now we're managing to get that bridge reinstated to the project. So a road that was already busy enough that it was a barrier for people needing to cross it on foot or by bicycle was going to get busier, and now we're going to get a bridge over it, so it's going to be easier for people to cross that road than it was before. So we can reconnect communities with active transport and not have infrastructure for one type of transport stop people from using other forms of transport, which is too often what happens. So advocacy works. I've learnt that.
Yeah, and as an advocacy organisation, we're really pleased to hear that. It's great to have an example of how advocacy's worked.
Yeah. Well, it helps to have responsive local politicians as well, right? And sometimes what you need to do is, if you only approach one politician, nothing might happen. So, if you approach a few different ones, then eventually you might find somebody who's willing to listen, who's willing to take the issue seriously and look into it. And so the other thing I've learned from that is, don't only approach one person and take no for an answer, right? If you think it's important, keep approaching people until you find somebody who's willing to listen. And I think there's more politicians and more bureaucrats these days who are willing to listen.
Yeah, that's a great hint. And we do. We have some great local members here who are really keen to hear from the community. And so, the community should definitely have their say. George, finally, this podcast is called Community Matters. I'd be really interested to hear about a person or people in the community that matter to you.
Yeah, that's a good one, Nikki. There's a couple of people I think I'd like to mention, and they highlight the importance, I suppose, their experience highlights the importance of getting some active transport infrastructure in there. And the first one is a young man called Matt McMorr, who works for Flagstaff. He's a young man with a disability, but he's also an advocate for people with disabilities. And he cycles to and from work. And he's able to do that because we've got some great cycling infrastructure along our coastline. We've got the Coastline Cycleway, which is part of the infrastructure I used to get here today. And whenever I see him riding his bike along that Coastline Cycleway, it really... Well, I find it quite inspiring because I can see that he's got the opportunity to enjoy independent mobility, but it really drives home for me how important it is to have that infrastructure to provide greater transport equity for people who don't have the ability to drive a car. They can actually have a facility which allows them not to be dependent on others for their transport. The other person I've found really inspiring these last couple of years, we have an organisation that established in Wollongong called, in the Illawarra, Cycling Without Age Illawarra. And one of the driving forces behind it is a lady, Elaine Fatu, lives up at Taraji. But she is, well into her 70s. And as well as being a driving force behind doing the fundraising to get that organisation established and buy the equipment they need, which are like electric trishaws that you pedal. I saw her on Tuesday pedalling that trishaw with 2 elderly residents from Warrigal Care on the cycleway heading south from Taraji Point up there in Wollongong. And I thought, what a great thing for somebody to be doing, somebody who still has the capacity themselves to get around with independent mobility, but providing an opportunity for people who don't to actually get out there and experience the fresh air, socialise with people, and just experience the joys of going along that bikeway with the smell of and sound of the surf and the wind in your face. It was just great to see.
Oh, thank you. I had heard about that program. What a fantastic program that is, but I didn't know about Elaine. So thank you for sharing those 2 amazing people from our community.
Actually, to be honest, I think a couple of the people who were sitting in the trishaw were actually younger than her. So she's pretty amazing.
She sounds like an absolute inspiration. And George, you've been inspirational for me too. I think you've really inspired me. I definitely need to jump on my bike and come up to work. Unfortunately for me, I think I'd have to get up at like 2 o'clock in the morning to do that. But maybe if we had better public transport from the Illawarra, from the Shoalhaven to the Illawarra, it might be easier for me.
One improvement we could make to our public transport that might make it possible for you to at least ride part of the way is if we made it easy for people to take their bikes on trains.
Yeah.
You can ride to your nearest train station, catch the train to, Dunmore, and then ride, you can't stop at Dunmore anymore, Shellharbour Junction Station, and then ride your bike the last little bit from there, and at least you get here, you get some exercise. But you can't do it unless you can take your bike on the train. We need to improve that.
Yeah, great point. Another great point. Thank you so much for being with us today. I've learnt so much about active transport. It's been fantastic having you here. And as mentioned, anyone can contribute to that strategic plan that Transport for New South Wales are putting together. It was the Ask New South Wales website, I believe, but we will definitely put that link in the show notes. Don't forget to check out George and the amazing work that they're doing at Healthy Cities Illawarra by visiting their website. And you might even be able to give them a call and get on that active transport task force. Thank you for tuning in to Community Matters. Please, like us, subscribe, leave us a review or share this episode. And don't forget to join us for more episodes into the future. Until next time, Community Matters.